Welcome to Retail Retold, the stories behind how that store landed in your neighborhood. I'm Chris Ressa, in conversation with the people and stories shaping retail and real estate. Brought to you by DLC. Welcome to Retail Retold. Today I am joined by Richard Cohan. Richard is the owner of R.A. Cohan Commercial Real Estate Services. Richard spends his time helping attract retail, restaurant, and entertainment users to two different markets on behalf of those business improvement districts and/or municipalities. Excited for him to be here. Welcome to the show, Richard.
Thank you, Chris. Also excited to be here. Very much appreciated. I know you said to give you a little brief intro here. So happy to tell you, married the love of my life, Nadine, 37 years ago. My older son is Michael. His bride is Hillary. They have two children, Ethan and Asher. Lindsay, Jake is my other son. He married Lindsay. They're married about a year. No kids yet, and blessed with some great friends. I, at 11 years old, delivered the Newsday, which was is still there, paper on Long Island. And I was 11 years old, but I learned a lot from delivering Newsday. You go once a week, you knock on the door, you'd say collect, and many times some of the women would say to me, "Gee, my husband's not home." So I kind of learned at an early age that people probably are not all that truthful with you. What I was looking for was 30 cents, with the tip might have been 50 cents. Okay. Then as I got a bit older in life, probably about 14 and a half, I started working in the Inwood Beach Club. I was a dishwasher. I was a busboy. I was a cabana boy. And at the beach club, I also learned at an early age, some people treat you great. Some people don't. I decided, gee, I want to go through the rest of my life, treating people great. And to this day, that's the way I treat people. Just as a quick segue, Danielle, your assistant, she treats me like I'm Steve Schwartzman from Blackstone. Obviously, I'm not. I know your company is very big on best places to work, 5 years running. So it's certainly not lost on people like Danielle. And as far as professionally, so I graduated University of Miami in 1981. I had a business law professor. He knew Charlie Ogg. Back then, Garrick Ogg was kind of where everyone went to start in retail store leasing. Started there at Garrick Ogg. Over the years, I've worked with several of the larger brokerage houses in New York. About 15 years ago, 34th Street Partnership recruited me. The two Dans, Dan Beatum and Dan Pizar, they recruited me, be their retail consultant. I prefer the word advisor. Sometimes consultant has a little bad vibe to it. I like the word advisor. Been with them about 15 years. And again, what do? We look to attract retailers, ideally Apple, Whole Foods, Lulu, Crumble, Pickleball, Paddle. Do we get all of them? Of course not. Okay, and you can have disciples of those type of brands. And then after working with the partnership, Lake Charles, Louisiana, brought me on. I work outside of Nashville and Laverne, Tennessee, a couple of cities in New Jersey, downtown Somerville, Hackettstown, and again, all very different. I mean, the bayou of Southwest Louisiana and Midtown Manhattan, very different, Chris. That being said, a lot of common threads. When you're a building owner, when you're a landlord, you kind of look for the same thing in a retailer in the bayou of Southwest Louisiana as you do in Midtown Manhattan.
So, appreciate the insights. So, today, so you were in brokerage for a while as an advisor. Today, you're advising municipalities on how to attract retailers. Are some of the things you're telling these municipalities to do? Like, you
Sure.
go and you evaluate, you go to Lake Charles, and you meet with Lake Charles, and Lake Charles tells you, "We'd like to do XYZ." So what do you do? Outside of just right, I think everyone knows that you you might be either calling brokers on behalf or calling retailers, but what do you do to make the opportunity more attractive?
Sure. I really love to peel back the onion. So on my last trip to Lake Charles, we visited the Priyan Lake Mall, which I'll tell you, I mean that mall, it's hurting, it's hurting. And we went into Dillard's, with my executive director George Swift. We went into Dillard's and his lieutenant Eric, and they introduced me to Paris. Paris is in Dillard's in men's suits and ties, which I think, Chris, you'll agree with me in these post-COVID years, men's suit and ties, not exactly Lululemon. And meeting Paris and talking to him, he told me what you and I, what everyone knows. He says, "Look, Richard, I work really hard." He says, "I work really hard." And he says, "Whether you're in Lake Charles or Paris, France, there are weddings and there are funerals." And he says, so the weddings and the funerals, that kind of keeps the men's suit business going. And again, he works really hard. So I'm able to then take that story from Paris with the executive director and tell the story of Lake Charles. Because today, obviously, everyone's interested in the data, the data, the data. Everyone needs the data, and they do, Chris. But it is important to meet the gentleman like Paris who works in the Dillard's department store in the mall and to get his insight, relay that to other people in retail, in the restaurant business, give them the flavor of a place like Lake Charles.
Okay, so you let some other people focus on the data and you focus on the story.
I cannot ignore the data, but we were both just in Las Vegas. So we had a meeting in Las Vegas with Chick-fil-A. And Chick-fil-A made the great point. They said, "Look, the data," and obviously they've got their own data, Chick-fil-A, and then they can use some outside data. And they made the great point at the meeting that perhaps Lake Charles is the right market for us, that the data shows that. They still need to visit Lake Charles, kick the tires, and they love talking to people like Paris in men's suits because, Chris, as you and I both know, he's on the front lines 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
Sure. In what's been from the business you're in today, where you help business improvement districts, what's been your biggest success story?
Okay, sure. So as far as success, a few of them that just come to mind. So when Ulta opened a couple of years ago at 34th Street and Herald Square, okay, and after the deal was signed, the broker called me and he says, "Hey, Richard, I got to thank you." He says, "Because the data, the data that you gave me, some of the market intel that you gave me,
Well,
kind of helped me."
were you working just real quick, and I don't mean to interrupt, but were you working on behalf of the 34th Street district to bring in Ulta? Is that what you were doing at that?
Well, we work at the 34th Street Partnership to help all the brokers, to help all the landlords, to help all the tenants. So in that case, yeah, I was helping the broker.
Got it.
Okay. But I do not broker the deal. You know what I mean? We leave that to the brokers. But we're there to be advocates for the district. So that was, a big win. I'm happy to tell you that my people outside of Nashville, Laverne, Tennessee, early next week, the very first BJs Wholesale Warehouse Club will open in Laverne, and we're ahead of Nashville there. So this is the very first BJ's in the state of Tennessee. They'll open early next week, and where I get a lot of just gratitude there. Bill Zanoni of BJ's, he singles out my people in eco development. Thomas Broker, Julie Wilson, their great team, the mayor singling them out, saying that look, when you're at BJ's, they work on a lot of deals, and granted, some of them don't close. This one not only did it close, it's opening next week, and he signals out my people because they really they pretty much act as a broker. They're not brokers, they're in economic development, but he really appreciated what they did. And just one last quick one. I think we all know across the country, Crumble is a very successful brand today. Everyone seems to be intrigued by Crumble. I'm happy to tell you that my people in Lake Charles, when Crumble opened, I don't know, 5, 6 weeks ago, in the history of Crumble, which granted is not, a 100-year history, but in the history of Crumble, had the greatest grand opening week ever. And Lake Charles, keep in mind, a couple of years ago, decimated by the two worst hurricanes to ever hit the mainland. So we're very thankful that in Lake Charles, things are coming back strong.
Got it. Bring me back to the BJ's Wholesale Club. That one was interesting to me. What so BJ, I guess you met with the Laverne, Tennessee hires you.
Right,
So you get on a call or you get on a plane and you meet with Laverne, Tennessee.
right. Both. I'm in Laverne, easily once a year. And what I'm really doing, Chris, because before I got involved in this advisory business, uh, had about 35 years of brokerage. So, we use the word advisor, we use the word consultant. What I really am, I'm a coach. I'm in the background as a coach, working closely with the people in eco development. And on our phone calls, I encourage them, curse at me, scream at me, lose your patience with me. And we role play. And then when they're working with the respective developer or the retailer, they have the to remain calm, to remain calm. So I kind of coach them in the background.
Give me some perspective in time. How long have you been working with Laverne?
Been with Laverne probably 4 years.
Okay. And talk to me about how BJ's came to be there.
Long road, long road. It's a long road. Laverne has not one, but two Amazon fulfillment centers. So again, not one, two Amazon fulfillment centers. You're a deal maker. Um, the main thing I get from working with my clients in eco development, most of them tell me they don't get respect. Okay, they don't get respect. And I go back to your story recently, where I think in Connecticut, you drove a few hours twice, a few times. I encourage my people in eco development. I say, look, if you want respect from the Chris Ressers of the world and from the BJs of the world, you have to earn it. You have to earn it. And you have to do the type of things that you may not want to do. So the BJ's deal was, as you can imagine, a long process. The developer, the city, BJ's, again, very happy to tell you it's done. The other thing I do let all my clients know in eco development, because they say, of course, a BJ's deal is very difficult to do, and they'll say, but if we're doing, a cookie deal with some 19-year-olds just starting, that's a simple deal. And I always tell them, I said, no deal is simple because the priorities of a large corporation like BJ's are different than someone who's just starting as a sole entrepreneur. And I let my people know, because many times they'll say to me, how in the 11th hour? How in the 11th hour, Richard, can all these problems be happening? And they're shocked. And I always tell them, I'm not. That's where all the years of filmmaking comes in, because in the 11th hour, that's when issues, can pop up.
for sure. I think in eco development, one of the challenge is that it's so different municipality to municipality. So as an as an owner of property in multiple markets, they act differently from place to place, and they have different responsibilities. So I I think the larger the municipality, the more impact they typically have, or because they have bigger budgets, they have things to help them. The small ones might not. I think one of the things that what what any business is looking for from economic development is the ability to actually either compress time or to help them navigate the water that they might not know how to do in that specific market. If economic development can do those two things, it would go a long way.
Fully, fully agree with you. In a market that I do not represent, but in the Palmer Square in Princeton, New Jersey, Hermes is under construction. I believe their construction period is gonna take about 4 years, and I think you hit the nail on the head. And I understand an Hermes is an elaborate design, okay? Still, you could build an entire retirement community in South Florida with a golf course in 4 years. So I think there is sometime the disconnect with the retailer, with the building owner, and hopefully the business improvement district, the economic development people can help that logjam.
Okay. Well, I appreciate a lot of the context. One of the premises of this show are stories about how deals came together. You have a story about Madison Jewelers in New York, New York. Take it away, Richard.
Thank you. Thank you. So when I was still, active in brokerage, probably a good, 15 years ago, I met the owner of Madison Jewelers. And, it probably took a week or so to connect because I walked into the store cold. He called me. We got to know each other well. It took us a while, and he secured a space at 400 Madison Avenue, which was a 500 square foot store. It's a few blocks south of where J.P. Morgan is building their world corporate headquarters today. Okay, and we did that deal, and then we went on to probably do about another 8 or 9 deals in
So hold
Manhattan.
on. Tell me how that happened. Don't just skip over the details. That how did we get that store in Madison?
Sure. Well, it was interesting. If my memory serves me correctly, we didn't know at the time. We did not know at the time that that particular landlord had lost 3 consecutive deals. So they had lost 3 consecutive deals, and we all know timing's everything. They had lost 3 consecutive deals. Alan Mamroot, the owner of Madison Jewelers, he made crystal clear to the ownership of the building, um, "I'm ready to go. Put a lease in front of me, and I'm going to sign it." And from a landlord's point of view, that's very, good to hear from a tenant. How many tenants actually do it, that's debatable. He did it. We negotiated in a very timely manner. The store is still there today, okay? And so that deal got done, and then once that store became successful, obviously at that time, there were other markets in Manhattan to go after. They took a mentality, let's kind of cluster the stores in Midtown and uh, pretty much, went on from deal to deal from there.
How many stores did they end up putting in Manhattan?
Probably at the high end, he probably had about 8 or 9 stores.
it's so interesting because we're starting to get back to that saturation retail concept, which had been a successful strategy for many retailers for years, and then kind of went away because we have this word called, cannibalizing stores, the C word. And I think now it's starting to come back. Why did he, and I don't know if you know, why did they want to put so many stores clustered around Midtown?
He he just believed that he had learned that someone that is on Madison Avenue and 47th Street doesn't necessarily get to 6th Avenue and 45th Street, okay? Or Lexington and 50th. Um or he had a store on 3rd Avenue and 50th. I think it's similar to the Starbucks. What Starbucks, they've always told me is in a place like Manhattan, Chris has his Starbucks and he goes to that Starbucks all the time, and they realize to capture the other people, Chris only goes to his Starbucks. So that's why you have so many Starbucks, obviously in Manhattan. Allen took a similar position in Midtown, which, needless to say, the last 3 years with the impact of COVID, it's not the Midtown of back then.
Got it. Well, and this person did some interesting stuff after the stores. Why don't you talk about what Alan did, after he started to open some retail stores?
Right, right. So keep in mind, when I met Alan, he was 22 years old. And so as the retail business continued to evolve, he got more and more involved in the e-commerce business. The opposite end of the brick and mortar store. He got more and more involved as a manufacturer, okay, wholesaler in the e-commerce world. And unbeknownst to me, we would always keep in touch, the phone, the email. I don't know. In about 2019, him and I we're having coffee, and I mentioned to him that I had to fly to Ontario. I said I don't fly to LAX. I had some business out in Southern California, and I said I fly to Ontario Airport, not an airport most people know about. He jumped in. He says, Ontario. He says, I rent warehouse space in Ontario. He says, I'd love you. I'd love you to help me out there. So keep in mind, again, this is 3,000 miles from New York, and I'm certainly not licensed in Ontario, but I have a friend who is a pretty prolific player, and he introduced me to another Alan who is a top broker in what they call the Inland Empire of Southern California. Okay, the Inland Empire. And he introduced me to Alan. It's ironic, both of them are named Alan. And I said to the broker, I said, look, I'd like you to meet, this gentleman. He's now leasing a warehouse space in the Inland Empire. They met. Um, it took about 6 months, which I know you'll say, gee, that's not long at all. It took about 6 months, and he ended up purchasing 130,000 square foot warehouse in the Inland Empire in Southern California. So that worked out well, for the principal, worked out well for the broker, and I'm a collaborator. That's what I do. So I made the collaboration there from for the principal, the people that sold the building, and obviously the broker. And while all this is going on, um, the industrial marketplace in the Inland Empire, it just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And as they say, kind of it became white hot. It became white hot. So last summer around this time, the same broker approached Alan um, with a buyer for the 130,000 square foot warehouse. And again, the market appreciated so much. He ended up selling that building that he had bought uh, basically 3 years later for a record price in the Inland Empire. Okay, ended up selling that building last summer. He then took the proceeds from the sale of that building last summer and made a really bold move. He said to me, Richard, I want to deploy that money in Midtown Manhattan in an office building. And again, this was a kind of a bold move.
First off,
Uh,
he's a retailer, not a real estate owner.
right, right. But well, he started as a retailer. Today, he's not only a retailer, he's a real estate owner. He's diversified. He's in several different businesses. So I said to him, okay, again, I can collaborate. I can introduce you to a top broker of investment sales in New York. I introduced him to Eric. And I'm happy to tell you the week before Christmas, this past Christmas, he closed on an office building in the West 30s, in Midtown Manhattan. And I would just say, because a lot of people scratch their head, and what Alan believes is if you buy the right building at the right price at the right time and you have patience, which I think you and I both know most people don't have. Alan today is probably about 36 years old. And throughout my career, I kind of had this: when you're 36 years old, you do have more patience than someone that's 66 years old. So, he believes in the office building, connected him there. So what I just find interesting, this all started with a 500 square foot store. We went across the country, 130,000 square foot warehouse, bought, then sold, and then the office building in Manhattan. And as much as Michael Douglas said in Wall Street, if you need a friend, get a dog. I remember that from the movie Wall Street. Happy to tell you, built a great, great friendship, with Alan, obviously the two brokers. It's all about collaboration. And just one last quick piece on collaboration, because I think that's such a critical word in my advisory business. When someone tells me, hey, I need the heavy cell phone data, I need to have an architect on premise, I need a hotel feasibility study, I'm able to tell them, okay, I have my strategic partner, my good friend Casey Kidd, Navi Retail, based in Fort Worth and Memphis. And when a city needs the items I just mentioned, the hotel feasibility study and the heavy cell phone data and the architect on premise, we can bring in the whole team there with Navi Retail.
Got it. I think it's an interesting story, of success, starting with a retail store and this entrepreneur ending up with multiple retail stores, then and industrial warehouse to wholesale some product, then decided to leverage that into an office building, and that's a dicey market right now, so we'll see what happens there.
Yeah,
But really cool story. Thank you for sharing. I think I haven't been to Madison Jewelers. I'm gonna go check out their store for sure. Um, it's a really cool story. I think you do bring up a good point on the collaboration. And I would characterize it as you've done a good job of, once you've made a relationship, with staying in touch and keeping tabs on that relationship and always being there to help. And that has led to opportunities for you. And I think that's a really good point. But listen, Richard, I really appreciate the time today. I want to take us to the last part of the show, call it Retail Wisdom. I got 3 questions for you. Are you ready?
I'll try.
All right. Question 1. What extinct retailer do you wish would come back from the dead?
That's easy. Blockbuster. Used to love taking my kids to Blockbuster. They'd love also getting the candy, and I would love getting the candy at Blockbuster.
Great. Question 2. What's the last item over $20 you bought in a store?
Had to head to Las Vegas, like yourself, a few weeks ago for ICSC. Wanted to buy myself a new pair of shoes.
What store?
Um, Store Garmani in Red Bank.
Got it. Last question. If you and I were shopping, Richard, in Target and I lost you, what aisle would I find you in?
That's the easiest one of all. I am a two-time grandpa, and I'm proud to say I'm a vibrant two-time grandpa. And when you're a grandpa, the most important aisle in Target is the toy aisle.
Certainly is. Richard, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate your insights and sharing your story. Um, Stay in touch, man.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Appreciate you watching. Hit subscribe. See you in the next one.